In this lesson, we're going to be talking about working with a code editor. And I'm going to be specifically looking at Visual Studio Code, which I have a picture of here on this slide, but I also have it open over here in this tab. And you can go download Visual Studio Code for Mac or Windows for free. And it's a great code editor. If you prefer to use a different code editor, such as Atom or Sublime Text or something else, that's fine too, as long as it's got great features for editing code and it's not a word processor like Microsoft Word or something like that, then you'll be fine either way. But I'll be using Visual Studio Code throughout this course, so it might be helpful for you to use that as well. Okay, great. So sometimes when you open Visual Studio Code, you'll get these tabs open with the welcome or with new release notes if they've come out with a new version. And you can just close those tabs by clicking on the X. You'll notice I have Visual Studio Code open and running here, but I don't have any of those editors open. And I can make a new file by just going and choosing New File, and that creates a new file on here. Now, it's important with Visual Studio Code that before you do anything else, you save your file. That way it knows what type of file you're working with. So I'm going to choose File, Save As, and I'm going to just save this as myfile.html. So I'm going to save an HTML file to begin with on my desktop. Once I have an HTML file, then I can easily get the basic HTML structure by holding down Shift, pressing an exclamation point, and then pressing Tab. And that will give me the basic structure for my page. If you take an HTML class, you'll learn to type the doc type and to type all these tags. But we can use this shortcut. And again, what you do to get it, I'll just delete this, exclamation point, and then press Tab. And then you can come in here and give your document a name, My File. The title shows up in the tab in the browser, so that's kind of important. Great, so I can save that. Now, one thing to notice really quickly while we're here, see this dot up here? That means this file has changed and it has not yet been saved. One of the frequent mistakes I see at the beginning with users getting started with working with HTML and CSS and JavaScript is they'll add things to the file and then they'll forget to save them. And then they go to run the file and they realize their changes aren't showing up. So watch out for that little dot. You can get that to go away by doing File Save over here or Command S, Control S on Windows. And then it'll go back to just the X, which you would use to close that tab and close that window out. And then I can open this back up again by dropping it here. And that will open that file back up again. So that gets me some basics of getting files opened and working here in Visual Studio Code. A really important note if you're on Windows is open up just any Explorer window and click on the View tab, and then go over and check the box that says File Name Extensions. That way, when you save your files, you'll see the .html file extension. And that's really important. Too many times I have students making files that say myfile.html.html. And that's largely because Windows hides those file extensions by default. But we really want to be able to see them. It's really important to be able to see them. And I would show you this on my Windows laptop, but my Windows laptop has a terrible sound card and recording audio on it. It just doesn't work out very well. But here I have a screenshot of it. So please make sure you do that. Also, make sure that when you save files, make sure that the file name is always lowercase and never has a space in it. So I have my file, all is one word here. Do not put spaces in file names. I cannot be more explicit about that. Please do not put spaces in file names. It'll really cause problems for you. I'm back in my code editor, and now I'm ready to add a script. So let's add a script to this file, and we can see some JavaScript actually happen here. First, I'm going to put some HTML on the page, my first script. Nice if I spell that right. And then you can actually put scripts really anywhere inside this file. Sometimes they go in the head of the page here inside the head tag. Frequently, you'll see them down here just before the closing body tag. So I'm going to make a script tag. Make sure you spell it right, script. Look at that, what a mess. I'm going to make a script tag. So I have a script tag, and I'm going to click between these two angle brackets here and move that down. Maybe I should do that again, just to make sure I get it right here. If that's confusing. Script, like so. There we go. And then it puts the cursor between the two, and I can move that down. And here I can make a variable, var hello equals good morning Bill. And then in order to get it to do something, currently what we have to work with is the console, because that's what I've shown you so far in the other videos. We'll get to other things later and really pretty soon, but for right now we just have the console. So I can use console.log. Remember, we talked about this method before. Hello, to put that variable, or really the string associated with that variable, into the console. So I can save this file. Notice the dot up here. I have to save it. I can save the file, and then I can go over to Chrome over here, and I can go to File and Open. Or on Windows, you can do Command O. And then here I am on my desktop, and I can open this file. And it comes up, and it doesn't really look like much. It's just a web page, and we're not even seeing the script run. But if we go and choose Inspect, and then click on the console, you'll see that it comes up here. And my JavaScript is actually running, and it's doing this. So, so that's actually working great, and really cool. We've gotten our first script to run. The next thing to talk about is how we can make some comments in JavaScript in case we want to remind ourselves exactly what we're doing. It's always good practice to add comments to your scripts so that when you come back to them later, you know what's going on. And there are two ways of making comments in JavaScript. I can use the slash twice, 2 slashes, and I can type the variable is below, or something like that. Or the variable below, I don't know, we could say something else about it. But putting 2 slashes, 2 forward slashes here, will keep JavaScript from trying to do anything with this line here. If you want to have a longer comment, you can use the slash and a star, and then end the comment with a star and a slash. And then in here, I can put a longer comment about anything that I want, and it can go multiple lines, like so. So I can have that start with a slash star and end with a star slash. And that will help me make comments in my code so that later when I come back to try to find out what I was doing, I can leave notes for my future self, which is super helpful. While we're here, another thing that's important is I can actually make the code in the browser larger or smaller by pressing the Command plus or Control plus on Windows on my keyboard here. Whoops, click on that. And that will make the code larger or smaller. And I can make this window over here smaller too. If the code is getting squished in there, you can close it all together. This thing opens and closes that Explorer. But I can make the code larger or smaller. And depending on how good your eyes are, you might want the code to be larger or smaller. Command 0 will put it at its default size. But Command minus will make it smaller. So make sure you're setting your code to a size that's comfortable for you to read, because a lot of times when I'm working with students, I notice that they're having a hard time seeing the difference between a semicolon and a colon. Those are two different characters. And if you're having a hard time seeing the difference between the characters, then the code is probably too small for you. So make sure you set it at a comfortable size. The next thing to talk about is folders and working with folders for projects. This file, my file.html, this file here, is just sitting on my desktop. And that's fine for a single file. But usually if I'm working on a project, I'm going to have a folder with a bunch of related files. I might have an HTML file, I might have a CSS file, I might have multiple JavaScript files as we get going here. But for right now, this is just a single file, and that's not really very useful by itself. So over here, I'm going to make a folder, and I'm going to give the folder a name, My Project. Notice there are no spaces in that folder name. Never put a space. Also, all the letters are lowercase. It'll just make your life so much easier if you keep everything lowercase. It doesn't have to be, but you have to not have spaces. So My Project. And then over here, I could open up this sidebar. I'm going to close this file and open up this sidebar here. And no folder opened. I can actually open that folder. My Project. And now you can see I've got my welcome screen again, and I've got My Project here. And there's no files in this folder currently. I just made a folder and it's empty. But I can put a file in that folder. I'm going to close that welcome screen. Over here, this button will create a file. This button will create a folder. Be sure you're not confused between the two. So if I make a new file, suppose I make a file and call it index.html. That's going to be an HTML file, and I can put that in my folder. And now you'll notice it's created the index file. And not only that, but if I look in my project folder over here, you can see that index.html has been created in that folder. And so I can manage my whole project from here. Perhaps I have another file in here. I'm going to have styles.css. So maybe that's going to have some styles for my web page, and it's going to go into that file. So now that file is now in the folder over here. And in this way, I can control and keep track of all the files for my project, and they're all in one place. Remember, I said earlier, you have to get really good at file management, and you have to make sure that all the files for a project stay in the folder. And you might have other folders in the folder. So if I come back here, I might make a folder for images. Now this is a folder, and currently there's nothing in the folder, but if I look in this folder over here, you can see that the folder images is here, and I could put images in there. Be careful when you're creating files not to accidentally put the file inside the folder if you don't mean to. So if I click New File here, it's going to create this file inside of images. Oops.html. So this file is actually inside the images folder here, and I can see it over here as well as being inside the images folder. If I decide I don't want that file, I can right-click here and choose Delete. It'll ask me, do I really want to move it to the trash? And sure enough, from over here, that file is now not inside that folder. The folder is empty again. So by working with this Explorer over here, we can create files and manage files for our projects and make sure that the files are in the correct places at all times. The last new thing that I have for this lesson is I just want to show you that Visual Studio Code is very customizable. You can add all kinds of extensions to it. And if I click on this gear icon down here, I can get into the settings. And I can do all kinds of things in here with extensions and other kinds of things. So for example, you can search for settings or extensions. Here are extensions here. Now turn off the settings. But you can do all kinds of fun things to make Visual Studio Code more personalized. Maybe you like this black look for your code editor, or perhaps you prefer a lighter theme. I installed this extension here called Atom 1 Light Theme, and you can click on that, and currently it's disabled, but I can enable this theme. And I think down here should be able to choose feature contributions. Should be switching here. Not sure why that didn't switch. This happens sometimes. Oh, select color theme. There we go. So here I've got the color themes, and I can select Atom 1 Light. Sometimes you have to mess around with this extensions and the theme editor and the settings to sort of really figure it out. But there's all kinds of themes that you can get for Visual Studio Code to customize it and make it look the way you want it to look. And I can go back to my files, and here I am. And so now you'll notice that my files will look a little bit different because I'm using the Atom 1 Light theme. So just to remember here, we've done quite a lot to make this page. Whoops! I don't know why it's not letting me edit my file. To make this page different here. I'm going to redo that last part because I kind of messed that up a bit. So you can see here I am in my project again for my index file. And I can come over here and click. And just to review what we did in this lesson, I can type an exclamation point and press tab to get the basic structure of a page. And I can add a title for my document here that will show up on my page. I can add some HTML. I'm just going to add an H1. Here is a heading. And then I can add some script tags, and I can add a script to my page. So I could do something like var my variable and set it to hello. And then I could console log out, console.log my variable. Notice it pops up here. I can even just press, I don't even have to type the whole thing. I can just press return to get it to pop that in place so I make sure I don't spell it wrong. And then a semicolon. Semicolons are used in JavaScript at the ends of statements. I can save that file, and then I can come back to the browser and test it. Let's do that really quick. Come back here to Chrome. This is the other file. So I'm going to open this file. I can do Command O. Command O, there we go. My project, index, and there it is. And it's doing hello there. So the hello came up in the console log there. So that's a review of everything we learned in this lesson. You're now able to work with files and get those files to output content into the console that you can then test in your browser. And that's a great way of working. Another way of opening your file is to right-click on the file and choose Open With and tell it to open with the browser. You could even try a different browser. Brave is a great browser to try. Brave is using the same rendering engine as Chrome, so it actually works the same way as Chrome generally. But what's interesting about Brave is that the CEO of Brave is actually that Brendan Eich guy who invented JavaScript. So it's kind of interesting to note that the guy who invented JavaScript is now in the business of creating a browser. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, great. This will get you started, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson where we can start writing some interesting scripts.